All right. I saw the recording come on, so I'm going to take that as my signal to get started here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming out. It's a nice group for a Friday afternoon on a holiday weekend. My name's Sam Malloy. I'm the R&D director for the Colorado-Wyoming Climate Resilience Engine. I'm joined today by my colleague Mark Gorham, who's the startup program director at the COI Engine. We've got Betty Cozzolino, our chief marketing officer, on the line. You've probably been getting a lot of correspondence from Betty. It's probably how you found out about our event today. We've also got Alan Rudolph. I'm not sure that Alan's on the line, but Alan is the chief technology officer for the engine, and you likely have interacted with him in the past as you've come to know the engine. So we are here today to talk about the second request for proposals that the engine is releasing in use-inspired R&D and translation. So you may have been part of the pre-RFP teaming events that we've had over the last couple of weeks. You may have a lot of familiarity with the engine. You may be totally new to the engine. We're here today to make sure that you've got the information that you need to put in a great application in the coming weeks. So for those who are less familiar with the engine, I'm going to give just a high-level overview. So this is a program of the National Science Foundation. There was a new directorate created through the CHIPS and Science Act 2022. It's called Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. And there were 9 engines set up around the country. We're lucky to have won one here in Colorado and Wyoming. I believe there were over 700 applications for these engines, so that was highly competitive. And these are very significant awards. It's possible that the engine could receive up to $160 million from the National Science Foundation over the next 10 years. We're coming up just on the end of the first year of this journey. So we started in April 2024. And we're coming up on our 1-year milestone. The engines have 3 core pillars: research and development, and translation, which we're here to talk about today, and workforce. We have a separate workforce program. If you're interested in interns, postdocs, that sort of thing, you can work with Brian Johnston or Amber Ron on our team, and they'll help you get connected with that programming. So as I mentioned, there's 9 engines around the country. These are really they're place-based economic development programs from the NSF. And so each engine is trying to build an innovation ecosystem spanning R&D, translation, and workforce in a particular technology area. So there is an engine in upstate New York that's focused on battery technology. There's an engine at LSU that's focused on renewable energy. There's an engine in Florida that's focused on the semiconductor industry. Our engine is focused on advanced environmental sensing and analytics. And specifically, it's that application area, that technology area applied to 4 core use cases: wildfire preparedness and response, water quality and availability, soil health, and air quality. And we're going to talk more about that focus and those use cases as we move through today's presentation. And again, the goal here is to build this thematic regional innovation ecosystem. So in contrast with traditional NSF programs, which you may be familiar with, that are really focused on basic research, the NSF Engines program is really focused on drawing R&D through to translation or commercialization and building an ecosystem that includes startups, corporate partners, academic institutions, and national labs partners that you see listed here. So specifically, the engine has a number of partners across sectors. This is a word salad, but you see the partners listed here. I won't go through them all, but just to kind of give you, again, a high-level sense of the engine, if you're not familiar with this, the engine includes as its partners all of the major research universities in Colorado and Wyoming. It includes a number of high-profile corporate partners like NVIDIA, Palantir, Mars. It includes 6 federally funded labs: NOAA, NCAR, NREL, USDA ARS, NIST, and NEON. And that is a real differentiator of our engine. No other engine in the country has this depth and breadth of federal research laboratories that we have, and we think it's one of the reasons why we were competitive enough to be awarded an engine. It includes we have partners in translation, including groups like CSU Strata that are focused on getting IP out of academic institutions, getting it licensed and used by startups. We have economic development partners, and we have downstream partners in state and local governments. A number of these partners actually came to our pre-RFP teaming events and helped highlight some of their use case challenges for R&D and translation teams to consider. So as teams are putting together proposals, and as we're discussing the opportunities in R&D and translation today, we just want to make you aware the engine has a number of partners that you can collaborate with, whether that's direct research collaboration, whether it's using data from some of our partners, whether it's having a pipeline on a commercialization pathway with some of these partners. We want you to engage with the ecosystem, and we're here to help you do that. The region of service is significant, and it spans the 2 states. So this is a regional program. We have an impact across Colorado and Wyoming. It includes footprint by all of the partners that I just listed, which span several cities and rural areas in Wyoming and Colorado. So we're here today to specifically give you information about the current request for proposals. So there are 2 grant opportunities in use-inspired R&D and translation, respectively, and they're both open. So the objectives collectively across these grant programs are, number 1, to boost the innovation capacity of the region. Number 2, as we're doing that, to create sustainable innovation ecosystems toward the goal of number 3, demonstrating economic growth in this innovation corridor that we're trying to build. And the focus for all of this is a framework that we call ASCEND, or Advanced Sensing and Computation for Environmental Decision Making. So what is this framework about? This is important for potential applicants to be aware of. This is really how it's the lens through which we view our R&D and translation programs and investments. So the thesis is we're in a region that has differentiated capabilities in generating environmental data. As our CTO, Alan, would say, it spans satellite to soil. So we have teams in our national labs that are building sensing instruments that will be used for remote sensing at the satellite, plane-based, tower-based level. We have teams at our universities and startups that are creating low-cost distributed sensor networks. And we have teams that build, organize, maintain biorepositories and use omics data. And we also recognize at the second level of this diagram that we're at a unique moment in time due to the increases in computational scale and efficiency that we have the opportunity to make to draw insights from this rich body of environmental sensing data that the region is producing through advanced data analytics, including techniques like digital twinning, knowledge-guided machine learning or physics-constrained machine learning, and causal modeling. Again, that can be done at incredible scale due to recent advancements in computer science And, just again, to give you a sense of what's guiding our thesis, if you look at some of the corporate partners like NVIDIA, we just added Julia Hub as a corporate partner. We have some of the strongest computational scientific modeling and simulation capabilities in the country here in our engine. And so it's advanced sensing transformed by translational data analytics, channeled toward actionable decision support in our 4 use case areas. And decision support can mean better prediction and preparedness for natural hazards. It can mean risk assessment and mitigation, things like wildfire. It can mean optimization of scarce resources. Let me just see, we got a question in the chat here. Oh, Betty's posted some links. Thank you, Betty. So this is the Ascend framework, and this is the organizing construct for the RFP. So as you're thinking about applying to this round, you want to think of how you could map your product or service or solution onto this framework. So as I mentioned, we've got 2 opportunities that are active. We have use-inspired R&D, which is low to mid technology readiness levels. And we have translation, which is higher technology readiness levels and is oriented more toward commercialization. So on the R&D side of the house, the goal is to foster research and development of solutions, again, moving them from, for example, a technology readiness level 3 or 4 to 5 or 6, where they're ready for some kind of translation or commercialization pipeline. The eligibility criteria has changed from the first round. So if you applied in the first round, please note that for R&D, the eligibility criteria has expanded. In the first round, you had to be based at a specific set of academic institutions. In this current round, PIs can come from academic institutions, yes, but also national labs or private sector organizations. And just as a loose guideline, R&D activities should focus on innovation that has yet to be licensed or optioned. On the translation grant, in contrast, this is about accelerating the commercialization of innovations that have already made it through that low to mid stage TRL progression. And the focus for the translation grant program is on startup companies. So if you're based, at a startup company, you should think about proposing to translation. If you're based at, as long as you're working on kind of a late stage concept. If you're working on something that's earlier in the R&D pipeline, consider the use-inspired R&D. And certainly if you're at an academic institution or national lab, the use-inspired R&D is a better fit. All right, so I'm going to go into the use-inspired R&D opportunity, and then I will turn it over to Mark to discuss the translation grant opportunity. So in use-inspired R&D, I already spoke to the objectives and the eligibility. Both grants, the organizing theme is this Ascend framework. And your proposal doesn't have to map to the whole framework. For example, you could be focusing on the advanced sensing layer. You could be focusing on the translational data analytics layer. You could be focused on the decision support layer. But you want to think about mapping yourself to that construct. Within the Ascend framework, there are 4 focus areas, use cases that we have identified as the priorities for this round, and that is soil health, air quality, water quality and availability, and wildfire preparedness and response. So these are broad areas. There are a lot of ways to come in. The important thing is to, number 1, make sure that you're aligning to the Ascend framework, and then number 2, make sure that you're meaningfully addressing one of these 4 core areas in your application. So we anticipate making approximately 3 awards. These are one-year projects that we anticipate beginning on or near June 1st. So here's another distinction from the first round. If you were part of that cycle, the funding ceiling has increased. In the first cycle, the funding ceiling was 300K for use-inspired R&D. In this cycle, it's 500K, and that's inclusive of direct and indirect costs. And a big reason why we increased the ceiling, because we got feedback from our R&D applicants in the first round, said, look, for what you're asking for, the type of quick technical progress that you're seeking in these awards, given indirect costs, et cetera, we really need a higher funding ceiling. So we took that feedback and we've changed the award size. I will say that has an impact on the anticipated number of awards. We're giving larger single awards. We'll probably be able to issue fewer as a result. So with that, we strongly encourage you to partner. We love to see partnerships. In particular, we like to see cross-sector partnerships. So if you're at an academic institution, consider working with a national lab partner. Perhaps they have a source of data that can really catalyze your work. Consider working with a startup venture that could be a commercialization partner in your work. Consider working with one of our public sector or corporate partners who may help scope the challenge area that you're working within and give you feedback from the end user perspective. Partnerships are really important. The other thing I'll say on funding is that this is there's a leverage requirement. So if you put in a proposal for 500K, you need to demonstrate 500K of leverage. And this is the most common thing that we get questions about in office hours or in these kind of info sessions. So the leverage, it's important to say this is very flexible, and we try to work with teams to identify sources of leverage that are accessible to you. It's not necessarily a cash match. Cash in-kind contributions, that is one source of leverage, but there are other ways to get leverage. For example, if you receive access to a proprietary data set from a corporate partner, and you can assign a value to that data set, monetary value. Perhaps it's a 100 or 200K value for the data set, and that's been provided to you as in kind through a corporate partnership. That is a great source of leverage on your project. Similarly, we've had teams that have applied in the past, and they have access to, for example, in the agricultural setting, they have partners, demonstration or field testing partners who give them access to industry sites. Again, you can assign a value to that. Perhaps someone on their team is coming out and testing with you, corporate partner. That's a great source of leverage, the value of their in-kind labor contribution. So this is a flexible requirement, but do know that is a one-to-one requirement. Also not required to put in the full 500K budget. You could submit a 100, 200, 300K budget, anything in between. And whatever the budget ends up being, you'll have that one-to-one match requirement on the leverage. So in terms of the application cycle, most important thing to note is the opportunity is now open. So you should jump in and take a look if you haven't already. And there is a required letter of intent in this round that is due in just 11 days. It's due on February 25th. And that will be submitted via InfoReady, which is the grants platform that our website will direct you to when you click on the Apply Now link. So we introduced this letter of intent phase in this round because we know, as people who have submitted a lot of proposals, it takes a lot of time and energy to put in a full proposal. And we had a few not many, but a few proposals in the first round that were off target, and it's essentially got the sort of desk rejection because of being off target. And we hate to see members of our community putting in that time and energy to a full proposal for an idea that probably was never going to be a fit because it wasn't aligned with the solicitation. So this a letter of intent phase is an opportunity for us to give a recommendation to teams on whether they should move forward or not with a full proposal. It's completely up to the teams as to whether you decide to put in that full proposal. This is just meant to be one data point to help you make that decision. So we're going to give really quick feedback. That recommendation will come just a couple of days, within a week from when you submit the LOI. And from there, you'll have the opportunity to put in a full proposal. And those full proposals will be due on March 18th. We're going to do, again, a very quick review, and we anticipate making selections on or near April 15th. And from there, there is an NSF approval step on our end that can cause a little bit of a delay, but we anticipate it'll be no later than 10 weeks. We'll be able to get the awards under contract, and you'll be up and running. So I mentioned the leverage requirement. You'll be participating in regular engine convenings. These are really things that we try to do to create value for the teams. So this is meant to be additive, not a burden for teams. You'll be submitting, kind of your standard quarterly and end of year reports, and any unspent funds have to be returned. So all that to say, this is really a program where you need to move quickly, need to demonstrate in your proposal that you can make quick progress and execute on your funds in a timely manner. So with that, there's evaluation criteria. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here. These criteria are outlined in the request for proposals. All I'm going to say on this slide is just make sure that you've looked at the evaluation criteria as you're building out your proposal. If you decide to move forward with a full proposal, this is how you'll be assessed. There's a formal technical review that's conducted by subject matter experts and our R&D advisory board. So your proposal will be assessed against specific criteria outlined here. So make sure you've looked at that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mark Gorham, who's going to talk about the translation grant opportunity. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Sam. And let's advance slides. The good news for all of you interested in the translation grant is that a lot of what Sam said applies to you. So what I'm going to do is just cover the major areas that are different from the use-inspired grant. So as you can see on this slide here, you need to be a Colorado or Wyoming company or institution. So you could be an institution of higher education as well to apply for a translation grant. And the focus areas are the same: soil, air, water, and wildfire. Next slide, please, Sam. Okay, so differences. Whereas use-inspired has a cap of $500K, funding for translation grants will range between $250,000 and $750,000. The application cycle is exactly the same, but the matching funds are different. In use-inspired, your matching funds were 1-to-1. So if you're looking for $250,000, you needed to have $250,000 of matching. For translation, the requirements are 2-to-1. So if you're looking for $500,000, you need $1 million of matching. Also, because you are going to be a company and trying to grow a company, we want you either to have participated in an incubator or accelerator, or during the 1 year of the project, participate in an incubator or accelerator. Innisphere is an incubator, so you could use Innisphere as that, or there are other ones certainly in the area you could use. So anyway, there's going to be a requirement for an incubator or accelerator. I think those are the main differences. So let's continue on, Sam. So as you can imagine, when we're evaluating a translation grant, there'll be some differences, a lot the same, but things like market analysis, funding path, and business model are added to the evaluation because you are now a business and we want to make sure that you have a plan that can grow and have you succeed. So those are the differences in the evaluation criteria. Next slide, please, Sam. And I'm going to turn it back to Sam now.
All right, thanks, Mark. And while I get into the application details, I think one thing that Mark and I really want to emphasize is that this is a program with two opportunities that are very complementary. So the ideal sort of vision for how teams would move through is that maybe an idea starts in use-inspired R&D, and then in 1 or 2 years, there's an opportunity to progress into the translation space. That's not the only path. You can start as a translation team, and we funded several of those in the last round. But just know that these are really two parts of the same sort of overarching program, and they're all focused again on building this collaborative innovation ecosystem that's focused in our sort of specific technology and use case areas. So we went through in our 2 areas this timeline. Just keep this up here so that you can see for a minute. Again, we really want to emphasize the letter of intent is required and it's due on February 25th. I also want to emphasize it's a very light lift for PIs and applicants. It's 1 page, ask you some simple questions. It's just allowing us to triage and give you a good recommendation on whether or not we think your idea is a good fit for the program, so that you can confidently move forward with the full proposal. The full proposal will be due on March 18th. And again, it's going to be a quick turnaround to get you a decision. We're very proud of that. We as a program have the goal of moving with deep scientific technical rigor, deep analysis of market opportunities. But number 2, we try to move really quickly to get you the funds as soon as we can, and to make this as easy of a process as possible from an applicant standpoint. So with that, I'm gonna open it up to questions from the folks online. And I should also mention, in addition to this info session today, Mark and I host office hours, and those office hours we'll put the link in the chat. Betty may have done it already. They're easy to sign up for. They're 15-20 minute slots. You can just jump on with us and ask us in a closed door setting anything that's on your mind about this either opportunity. We do them together so that we can comprehensively answer any questions that come up, and you get one answer from us. So we're having those for the next several weeks, and you can jump on really at any time that's open on the bookings link. So I will stop there and turn the floor over to questions. And I see we've got a couple in the chat. So let me hit these first. Nikki, did you want to come off and ask your question?
Yeah, the question I put in the chat was relating to you saying that there might be a quick turnaround for the letters of intent, and I'm wondering whether a faculty member could submit multiple letters of intent and get feedback on which of those concepts might be the best candidate, or submit multiple ideas in the single letter of intent and get feedback on what they should focus on.
So each letter of intent does need to be a discrete idea. So I wouldn't put multiple in one. The way that we're triaging this, we have some categories. The reasons that you would get a note saying we don't recommend that you move forward, it would be something like, we have sort of categorical selection over that. It's going to be, this is out of scope. You're submitting this from Maine, and this is not a program that's focused on New England, et cetera. So there's some, and for that reason, we'd ask that you just put one in a concept and team in the LOI. As to can you submit multiple? The answer is yes. I believe you can. I would, I would definitely try to prioritize, the ones that you're most excited about and think might be the best fit, because they're not going to be, we're going to try to do probably between 50 and 100 of these in just a couple of days. So you're only, if you get a recommendation to move forward, it's not going to have like an annotation from us about any particular, reason why we're excited about it, or, that sort of thing. So if you get 3 yeses, recommendation to move forward, that might be sort of difficult to make a decision about which one to
Is
prioritize.
that something you could help with during the office hours?
Absolutely. Yeah. That probably would be the better way to go than, submitting multiple LOI.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. I think we had a question from Ollie in the chat on how many translation projects we expect to fund. Tentatively 2 to 4. I think it really depends on which ones which proposals end up being highly competitive, and what are the budgets for those proposals. In the last cycle, we actually funded projects that had lower budgets than the ceiling, and so because of that, we had an opportunity to fund more than we had initially thought, and that could be the case this time around, or we could get 1 or 2 incredibly compelling proposals that are at the 750K range, and in that case, we wouldn't be able to fund as many. So it's not a set number. It's a little bit dependent upon what we get in the door. I see we had a question on the apply here link. Betty's got should use the links that Betty put in the chat there. If we had one on our slides that was outdated, apologize for that. Got a question from Tess here on air quality projects. Is the engine more focused on outdoor air quality or indoor air quality? I would say the answer is yes. Either fall within the scope of the solicitation. So yeah, I would say depends on the concept and technology and all of that, but they're both certainly in scope. Mark, do you want to take a question from Matt? Can you elaborate on the required involvement of the incubator / Inosphere?
So what we do at the incubator is run you through a series of training sessions on things that we have found most cause startups to fail. You don't have an adequate team. You don't have key positions filled. You're unable to raise money. You don't have product market fit. So we run you through that kind of training to give you the experience and knowledge necessary to run a successful company. As I said, the Inosphere does this. You could use the Inosphere. If you've gone through another accelerator or incubator, let us know which one. Chances are that it will meet the criteria, but it has to be somewhat rigorous, right? You can't have gone on a blog and said, yeah, I've been through incubator. You actually have to spend some time to learn the necessary skills needed to run a company. So if you have more questions on that, why don't you shoot me a note and we can deal with it in more detail. But that's kind of the reason why we want translation companies to either have had or go through an incubator. And it's not, you don't embed yourself in Inosphere for 3 to 4 months. We'll have a half-day session every 3 to 4 weeks for 4 or 5 months to get you the training you need. And there are also advisors and consultants that help you flesh out areas that maybe you're not strong in. And many companies find out that they need help with, take your pick, accounting, legal, intellectual property, go-to-market, social media. So we have companies and or experts that can help you figure that out, figure which way to go.
Thanks, Mark. I think you got a follow-up question in the chat. This is from Denny. We participated in the RVC accelerator about 9 months ago and are currently in another accelerator program. Is accelerator participation a new program after the funding, or is there a grace period for past or current programs?
RVC has a great accelerator. If you've gone through that, that's adequate. We don't require you to go through another one. If you're going through another one, great. But something like RVC, that's just fine.
Thanks, Mark. Got a question from Neil. Are these funds embargoed or likely embargoed? All I can say on that is we fully anticipate that we will be able to award these funds. NSF approved this competition moving forward just a week or two ago. So as far as we know, we're good to go. We would not have released the RFP if we didn't think we'd be able to fund teams. Got a question, I think it was earlier in the chat. Betty bumped it up for us. Mark, I'll kick this one over to you. Were there any key learnings from the successful round one translation projects in terms of what helped them stand out? I can speak to the R&D, but I'll let you, since they asked about translation, hit that first.
Sure. The app, you're going to fill out a one pager. We give you a thumbs up. You can fill out the entire application. I think the best applications did a comprehensive job in all of the answers. They had a good knowledge of the market. They had partners. They had an idea of how they would go to market. They had an idea of how much money they would need to raise and when. They had a business plan. So as you can imagine, in a grant competition where we got, as Sam said, 50 applications, some of the companies were very, very professional and did a great job. Others had relatively big holes in their understanding of what the market was or what their value proposition was. They had some cool technology, but they weren't exactly sure how it would be used. So really a good understanding of that shone through for the applications that won. And Sam, why don't you touch Use Inspire too?
Yeah, I think a common gap in the use inspired proposals was kind of weaker ability to speak to commercialization or translation pathways. And the flip side, I think a common gap on the translation proposals was sort of a lack of or a weaker technical approach section. It makes sense because our R&D teams are less focused on the commercialization pipeline. Our translation teams are less focused on the R&D and technical rigor. But the best proposals, I think, in both categories, in R&D, these teams were able to, yes, of course, outline a great technical plan of attack that you'd see in your any sort of standard USG winning application. And they were also able to make some really nice, telling a compelling story about how their solution could contribute to some type of commercialization pathway. And similarly on the translation front, I think the teams that won there, obviously, it's kind of table stakes that they had solid market analysis and commercialization pathway, but they also were able to speak to a level of technical rigor that brought them to the top. And I think the other thing I'll say on the R&D side, some of the teams that you'll see that were funded had fantastic collaborations and partnerships. And one that I'll highlight, we had a group from NIST, the National Institutes of Standard Technology, collaborate with AgNext at CSU. It was the first ever collaboration between those two entities. And this is an application of optical frequency comb, dual comb spectroscopy to the cattle feedlot setting. And that is such a creative, innovative partnership. So we love to see those types of collaborations. It makes the proposals highly competitive. So I've got a couple other questions here. Let's see, from Hans, looking at the winners of the first round, It appears a good chunk of the spectrum for both use inspired and translation have been captured. What remaining areas does your team see a need to fill? Curious on how to focus our capabilities when applying. I would say use the request for proposals as your guide to the answer on that. So anything that's within scope of this Ascend framework and those 4 use cases is within scope. We don't want to constrain to filling any super narrow gap because we're still in the nascent phase of this engine. And I think we're still looking for creative ideas. And I would also say if you see opportunities as you look at those first round winners to build on some of those concepts and capabilities, that's also compelling. So that's not a requirement, but it's a way to look at answering your question. I hope that helps. Denny has a question: is there a minimum or maximum page length for the LOI? That is defined in the application instructions. It's technically a 2-page document that you'll submit, but the first page is a cover letter. So it's kind of a 1 page of content, and we outline very specifically what needs to be in that LOI. So hopefully that helps. Again, through the info ready system, it will be very clear what you need to do when you go in to do that. I'll just highlight for everyone, Betty put the link to the first round awardees in the chat. Thank you for doing that, Betty. And Betty, earlier in this meeting, I'll drop it in at the bottom here, put in the link for office hours. Just make sure everyone has access to that. It's very easy to sign up. All right, we've got another question from Neil. How are monies drawn? If we require some physical equipment, is there a percentage limit? Neil, if you're able to come off mute and speak to that question, not sure I fully understand. If not, I can attempt.
Yeah, mostly just trying to understand cash flow. We're small companies. We want to grow. We need certain instrumentations to enable that. Do we have to demonstrate the capital purchase first and then we get reimbursed, or we demonstrate a purchase order and then you reimburse us for that? How might that operate?
So the contracts are cost reimbursable, meaning that we will the way these are set up, the engine will reimburse you for funds agreed upon in your contract as you incur them. And the constraint that we have on that, our broader prime contract with NSF is cost reimbursable, so that those terms kind of flow down to the subawardees.
I think what I've seen in the first round companies is they submit a PO to a vendor, and then they apply that to Innisphere, and Innisphere turns around and reimburses. And that reimbursement can happen in days. It's not your typical government cycle. I also want to say for everybody on the chat right now, we always get questions, oh, do I need to use NSF font 1025-C3? Do I need to use Form B 72A? Do I need to use any of these things from NSF? The answer is no. All right, this is an Innisphere, Colorado, Wyoming engine grant process. Everything you need, we spec out in the RFP. So it's a lot more, as Sam said, it's a lot more lightweight. And our plan is to get you payments a lot quicker than a normal government SBIR or STTR grant. So keep that in mind.
Thanks, Mark. Got a few minutes left here. Any other questions for us? Anything that's on your mind?
Question on if we have CRADA with university institutions that are not within the formal listing at the Ionosphere or within the project? Is that a problem or an opportunity?
It's not necessarily a problem. Let me ask first, is you mentioned you're a small company. Are you based in Colorado or Wyoming?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so you're eligible to apply absolutely as a prime on the translation award. If you have a partner from outside the region, that's fine. And I think I would just emphasize that we want the majority of the funds, the majority of activity to be deployed in the region in Colorado and Wyoming. That being said, we understand research collaborations often span borders, and one of the things that NSF has reiterated to us is that if our program in building through these grants, through this innovation ecosystem, if we're bringing capabilities from outside the region to the Colorado and Wyoming, two states, that can be compelling. So if we're applying something that's been developed elsewhere, making sure that is adding value here, creating jobs, having research impact, et cetera, that can be part of a compelling narrative. So I would say there's no hard and fast rules around this in terms of eligibility. You're good to go. I would just make sure that in the storytelling and the project plan, the work is intended to take place here to benefit Colorado and Wyoming, and that the majority of your funds are executed here. Hope that helps. All right. Well, Mark and I will be the last ones to drop. I know it's Friday afternoon, a holiday weekend, Valentine's Day. So if you want to drop off, we appreciate your time, and we're really looking forward to working with you. We love the ideas. It's very energizing for us, and we're really excited to work with you all in the next several weeks. Any parting comments, Mark?
Yeah, while everybody else can drop off and start to celebrate, I'll notice that we are already filling up office hours this afternoon. So if you're interested in office hours, there are many days, but I wouldn't wait until the last minute. It looks as though it's going to be a popular way to ask your questions. So they start this afternoon. There's still some openings, it looks like, and then there are going to be many other days. So just be aware that those schedules have a tendency to fill up.
Absolutely. All right, we'll hang on if anyone wants to ask a sort of more smaller group question here in the next couple of minutes. But thank you. Hope to see letters from you all soon.